Hey guys, glad to be back with another podcast. My wife you were a little under the weather last week. Still are a little under the weather with a little cough thing going on.
Yeah, it won't leave. I call it the death rattle.
The death rattle? Yes, I've been concerned with tuberculosis. I was not sure.
Yeah, it's just in there.
It's just in there.
Yes.
Yes, but 3 prescriptions from the doctor?
Yeah, I'm hoping that helps.
Hopefully so. Hopefully so. So we will see if we can make it through this. We'll see what happens.
We'll see. I already feel it coming a little bit.
We'll see what Sunday brings, as Judd Harris would say.
Yeah.
Okay. So in Mark chapter 11, I want to go down to verse 15, and we actually mentioned this in our last podcast. You asked about Jesus clearing the temple, right? When he came in and flipped everything over. This is the flip over passage.
Okay, but the reason why, and I went back, I was reading in that it's Killing Jesus book. That's why I thought there were 2 separate instances where he came to, I can't think of the name. What's the capital?
Jerusalem?
So he came to Jerusalem with his family at one point. And
when he was a little boy?
No, I mean, he went every year. He would have.
Yeah, he would have went every year to grow up.
He would have gone every year.
We had the account of the visit at 12.
But he went to Jerusalem at some point, and the Pharisees were kind of looking out for him and already didn't like him. And it wasn't this instance, though.
Yeah, it would have been earlier in his ministry.
Right.
That account probably would have been in the book of John.
I think it was like 6 months before this, actually. Mm-hmm. It was like the Feast of Tabernacles or something, because there were so many. And this was Passover, right?
Yes. This is Passover.
So I think it was 6 months before this. So that's why I was getting confused, because there was another instance where he was in Jerusalem for a big feast, but
yeah, he went multiple times
to me.
for those. Yeah, and that is true. Like understanding all of the feasts and celebrations that the Jewish people had, there were so many. There really were. There was a lot of different celebrations of different things, and the one that you're talking about, the Festival of Shelters, was that the one? That's a big one.
I don't know.
That's a big one.
I'm not sure.
But Passover being the granddaddy of them all, right? Like for the Jewish people, Passover is like Easter is for Christians. It's like the day, when they remember their escape. They celebrate their escape from Egypt on that night when the angel of death passed over all of the Jewish homes that had put the blood on the doorpost and sacrificed the lamb. And that's why Jesus' sacrifice took place on Passover, because Passover is a forerunner of Christ.
Yeah.
It was an image of what he was going to do when they sacrificed the lamb, and the blood protected and covered them. That death literally passed over them. And for us, Christ's blood causes death to pass over us.
And then on the opposite side of that too is he is the firstborn. Like he is the first son.
Yeah, he is the firstborn.
I mean, there's just so much
it's like the firstborn of Egypt
there.
Died. Mm-hmm. The firstborn of the Israelites was saved. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's interesting.
But at the same time, so this is a little bit of a rabbit trail, but at the same time, we look at some of the holidays that are confusing to us, and it seems kind of weird sometimes, but we have our own religious holidays also. I mean, we do celebrate Easter and Christmas, and it's just a natural. I was listening to a podcast the other day.
And for Christians, Thanksgiving in the United States, Thanksgiving, which is a very unique American holiday, like nobody else really got Thanksgiving going on. Good on America for having a holiday where the entire thing at this point is like, let's all eat a lot of food and take a nap. It's a really good.
Well, I mean, we have really July 4th too,
yes,
and I know that's more of a national holiday for our nation, but I think a lot of people, especially in the past, saw that as God's sovereign hand guiding and protecting.
Thanksgiving's the same way. Thanksgiving has its heart within Christianity.
Right.
It really does.
And so in the podcast I was listening to, he was basically saying that it's just our natural human response to celebrate things in a religious way and have these religious remembrances. And so for an increasingly secular world, that's why we see some of the holidays are trying to be replaced with more of a secular ideology. I mean, we have
Christmas, very much so.
We have a whole month celebrating Pride, and
Yes.
then even some of the Christian holidays are becoming increasingly commercialized and overrun with secular ideology.
Yeah, you even look at like Valentine's Day has its roots in Christianity. Thanksgiving, its roots is in Christianity. Christmas, naturally. Easter has its roots in Christianity. You know, so yeah, we do celebrate those things in that way.
Yeah.
And so this was a huge deal. Passover was this massive deal for the nation of Israel. It was all hands on deck. I mean, it was Christmas, Easter, 4th of July, and Thanksgiving all rolled into one when you think about it from an American holiday perspective. And so Christ, when he comes into the temple during this week, it's packed. Okay, Jesus is not doing this in an empty place. The entire population of Jerusalem would grow exponentially as people from all over the Promised Land, plus from places like Egypt, Asia Minor, which is what we think of today as modern-day Turkey. People came from Greece, people came from Italy, people came from Assyria, people came from over in the area of what we think of as today as Iraq and Iran, and they converged on Jerusalem, all these pilgrims. And so the temple complex would have been packed. And it says in verse 15, because remember, Jesus left Jerusalem. Like, he didn't stay in Jerusalem the whole week of Passover. He was over in Bethany, which was a short walk, or he was up on the Mount of Olives. And so he was just kind of coming in and out of the city. It was like a 45-minute walk. Yeah, he was like coming in and out of the city. So when they arrived back in Jerusalem, Jesus entered the temple and began to drive out the people buying and selling animals for sacrifices. He knocked over the tables of the money changers and the chairs of those selling doves, and he stopped everyone from using the temple as a marketplace. Okay, so they're buying and selling goods here. They're exchanging currency. Others are really, one of the things that they're doing is they're using the court of the Gentiles as a cut through. They would like cut through there. They could cut through the temple complex to get to different parts of town instead of walking around. And so it was almost just like the temple was just a thoroughfare, you know, just pass through. So when we think about this, the temple complex itself was pretty large. It covered 35 acres.
Wow. In
Jerusalem. And so there was several different, what they referred to as courts. There was the court of the Gentiles, which was the most outer court. Jews and Gentiles could gather there to worship. Then there was the court of the women. Now, once you enter the court of the women, there was actually signs up that, you know, Gentiles could not enter. Even at the time of Jesus here, there were literally signs up that said, if Gentiles enter here, you will be executed. Like, they would kill you over entering into this place. I
was reading about that also, and it said that because there's Roman occupation at this point, and that's basically saying to the Romans who are Gentiles, you have no authority in this place, and so they did
Romans
go
let
in.
them do that.
Well, one group went in because who was the emperor at that time? The Roman emperor.
It wouldn't have been Nero. Nero would have been.
He was after.
Later.
Yeah, he was after, and I can't remember.
Was it Tiberius?
Maybe that sounds right. I'm not great with names, but anyway, his policy was to let them have their religious authority because he felt like that would keep them more docile towards their rule. And so one of the people who was in charge of that area allowed the soldiers to go in and defile some of those things, and he got in a lot of trouble with the emperor, and they didn't do that anymore because they let them have that religious authority as long as it didn't
long as they didn't rebel, they paid their taxes, and they did what they were told.
Yeah. Taxes, that was a big thing.
Taxes were a huge thing for them. So there's the court of the Gentiles, the court of the women. Beyond that it was called the court of the Israelites. Jewish women could enter this court if they were bringing a sacrifice to the priests. Jewish men could come in at any time. Beyond that was the court of the priests. This is where the priests worked and ministered. And beyond that was the actual temple itself with the holy place and the Holy of Holies. So remember in those times that a major part, especially over Passover, a major part of the worship was sacrifice. So people are traveling from all over the place. And so what had happened was those people could stop there in the court of the Gentiles and buy the items that they needed for worship that had already been approved and announced to be clean and acceptable by the priests, because they inspected every sacrifice. So if you brought a sacrifice with you and it wasn't accepted, you could be just out of luck. And a lot of these people are traveling. How are they even going to travel with these things? So they had this deal of being able to buy them there when these pilgrims came to town. And Mark even mentions, he talks about people that sold doves. Doves were the sacrifice of the poor. Mm-hmm. When you couldn't afford a sheep or a bull or a goat or whatever, they sacrificed doves. That's what Mary sacrificed in Luke chapter 2 when she offered her sacrifice, because after a lady gave birth, after so many days, they would go and they would offer a sacrifice, and that's what she offered. It tells you kind of the state of what Jesus grew up in. Also, there was wine, flour, oil, salt, all things that were pronounced clean that they used in worship. They could buy all of those kind of things. The money changers are also interesting. There was, going back to the Old Testament, there was a specific tax that they paid. And it was actually referred to as the shekel of the sanctuary. And it was something that they gave to care for and support both the tabernacle and then the temple. And it was actually instituted by Moses. And so it was a special coin that was actually minted in Israel by the Jewish people, by the religious leaders. And so that was the only coin you could use. So people coming from Asia Minor or from somewhere else, they had Roman money. That was different kinds of money.
And they'd have to exchange it.
They exchanged it. And one of the tricks that they did is they charged them an exorbitant rate. They would charge them 10-15% exchange rate, which was just ridiculous. Everybody would have absolutely lost it when they heard and saw this. So he drove them out. And that means in the Greek, he forced them out with violence. He turned everything over. He would not suffer or allow this to take place. So he turns over the tables. He's driving everyone away. People, animals, everything is running around to get away from Jesus. Money is flying through the air. Okay? Can you picture all of this taking place? So he just loses it on them. But his reason was this was cheating the people. Mm-hmm. And it was taking his father's house and turning it into a den of thieves because they were stealing from the people. The priests were getting a kickback on this because the people that were doing the money changing and the selling, they had contracts with the priests, and the priests were getting kickbacks.
Well, I was reading a fictional story. It was by Francine Rivers, and it was...
Francine, I remember her.
Yeah, it was about one of the prophets. I think it was Amos, and so I'm just now getting into it. But it's been interesting because I didn't realize how the people noticed this, and they would have grumbled and been upset about being cheated.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you'll have to say if this is true or not, but she made it look like if they grumbled and complained too much and tried to push back on that, the priests were able to tell them, oh, well, you've got this sin that you need to repent of, and that would cost them more in trying to make more sacrifices and almost a tax on their sins, so they would have to pay this penance.
If they pushed back against anything the priests were doing?
Right, and so they would kind of fabricate.
I haven't necessarily studied and read about that. It may be true. And I just don't know it.
Because it makes sense. Like, why would they stand for this? Why would they allow that to happen? But the priest had so much power that there wasn't a lot that the people could do. And so the other thing that I think about when you mention all of this is that it's not nice what Jesus did. And we talked about this in Sunday school class, that the point of being masculine is that you don't always have to be nice, even femininity, but we have taken a lot of things about Christianity and the masculinity that is godly and have transformed that to mean that you always have to be this version of yourself. But Christ here is not being nice in what he's doing. Yet he is being godly and holy because he is standing up for what is right and good.
Yeah. He goes after sin and the hypocrisy of mainly the religious leaders. He doesn't ever really come down super hard on the people. Even somebody like the rich young ruler, he doesn't just blast him. He tells him the truth and then just lets him walk away. But the scribes, the Pharisees, the priests, Jesus is in their face and he tells them what's what, to the point that he comes in flipping things over. And so as Christian men, at times we need to exude that. We need to be strong. We need to say the truth, sometimes even when some people might not consider it to be kind. The people that Jesus was flipping their tables over, do you think they considered that to be kind and meek? No. But it was righteous. And so Jesus was protecting his Father's house, God the Father. Him as God the Son. He is protecting his Father's house. And he will not allow this. And so there's moments as Christians where we stand up and just say, no. And if that means we even got to get a little loud sometimes for the right reasons and the right things. When I think about our culture and things, it's fine for us as Christians to stand up and say no. And say, this is the truth. And I'm sorry if you don't like it. This is it. So that's what Jesus is doing here. He exudes that. And so, I'm looking forward to my Father's Day sermon because I'm going to dive into some of these things about men and Christianity and how the church needs strong, masculine men that stand up for what is right, sometimes even when that's a little bit uncomfortable.
Right.
So Jesus makes everything really uncomfortable, right? He goes after these people from top to bottom, and he uses that phrase, den of thieves. And so one commentator I read, he said, like robbers, the high priest and his followers had hidden themselves away in the temple, seeking to hide their wickedness under a cloak of holiness. Like thieves, these men were waiting for the foolish to enter the temple so they could take their money. I mean, it's really, brutal stuff.
And they were supposed to be the representing God himself in a way.
They held the priests to be the bridge.
Right. So to take God's name, they have the mantle of God upon them, and they are taking that and distorting it. That is
same stuff happens today.
Right. Yeah, with false teachings.
False teaching. A lot of these folks that are out to get a buck, like, you see the televangelist who says, well, I need this new Gulfstream, whatever, to go around the world and preach the gospel. Brother, Southwest gets you there, okay? Like, you hop on a commercial plane and fly places. But these folks are living in mansions. They're living in, they're driving, the fanciest of cars. They're flying in private jets. They're wearing Rolexes and, $5,000 suits. And they're doing it off the backs of people who they are bluntly taking advantage of. And the Lord may have mercy on their souls, but I'm glad He's in charge and not me, because I wouldn't have any, because that stuff is so foul. So just like the priests were making money off the people and using them, that happens within Christianity too, and it gives an awful name to Christianity when you see a lot of that stuff, because it is not representative of what Scripture actually teaches. So we have to be very careful in avoiding those things, in denouncing those things, and having nothing to do with those things. And one of my favorites is, you remember Preacher Sneakers? Remember that? It's still around, and he's still rolling. He's still rolling hard in the paint too, man. He'll put up, like this. He had one up the other day. Some pastor somewhere, I don't know who he was. I wasn't familiar with him. He had on like a $600 Gucci belt. And he like had a picture of the guy with the belt, like wearing it, preaching, and then had the price of the belt like on a website down here to like circle it. Like, wow. Like a lot of this stuff is very troubling. It's very troubling when, hey, we can dress nice and have some nice things, but like don't go insane. Like some of this stuff is just too much. Because I feel like some of that is culture leaking into the church. Yeah. And wanting to have these ridiculously high dollar Rolexes and this Gucci stuff and all of these sweatshirts that cost $500. I'm like, dude, you know me, I buy my shoes off the sale rack in the back of the store. I'm finding the cheap stuff. But I have a problem with it, because people, especially people outside the church, see that, and they make some very quick value judgments. And I look at it and I go, man, I got a real hard time arguing with them on this one. Yeah. I got a real hard time. And so I think, as church leaders, we have to kind of think about that sometimes. And, how much we spend on things and some of the things that we do. And we've got to think about it a little bit. And, keep things in reasonable check.
Yeah, I agree with you.
In those, because the priests were doing this, and we can't allow ourselves to fall into this same thing. Because I think the priests had really ceased to reverence God in their hearts. It was about power.
It was about them.
Position. Yeah. And them and what they could do and what they could take advantage of. And it wasn't about God anymore. And so Jesus comes and flips the whole place over. So, good for today? Yeah. You made it through without really very much coughing.
I know. I was trying to contain.
Containing. I've been there and done that. I've had to actually like click my mic off before preaching and have to get the cough out, because I thought I was going to just fall down the floor and die and roll around. Yeah. It's very difficult. But hopefully you will feel better very soon. But thank you guys for joining us and being a part of the podcast today. And we will see you guys again real soon. Hopefully in person at FBC Okeechobee. Be blessed.